Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show Mindful Matters on Radio Al Ansar at 90.4 FM in Durban and 105.6 FM in Pietermaritzburg. A show that promises to provide an hour of inspiration, information and motivation with me, your host Nazia Iram Osman. This will be a pre-recorded show, so unfortunately we will not be able to take WhatsApp messages. But if you have any queries or feedbacks, you can email me at kznpsychologist@gmail.com. So, today's topic is about raising a teenager in the 21st century. If any of you have teens at home, you know the struggle is real. From sweet, loving children, all of a sudden they become argumentative and moody, priding themselves on defiance and rebellion, banging doors, crying, arguing, threatening, etc., etc. And the fun part is that in this day and age, we're not just having this issue with teens, but also tweeners. Which of those of you that don't know this is the phase between 9 and 12. So Stanley Hall, the first president of the American Psychological Association, coined the term to describe the phase teenagers go through as a period of storm and stress. He referred to an adolescent's decreased level of self-control as the storm and the increased sensitivity as the stress. Biological changes of puberty, such as hormone changes, physical growth, and neurological growth, account for some of the storm and stress of this period. What's interesting in terms of brain development in a teenager is that no matter how smart the teen or how smart they think they are, the brain is not completely mature at around it only becomes mature at the age of around 25. So officially, that's when adolescent ends. So good news for all of those that thought they were old the moment they entered the 20s. Adolescent only ends when you're around 25. So the part of the brain that develops first in teens is the part that controls emotions. So decisions are usually made emotionally and impulsively without planning. The planning part of the brain, that is the prefrontal cortex, is the last to be fully developed. Thus we see many teens acting impulsively and the emotions become just too big for them. This is a difficult phase across race, culture, and society. But it can also be a great phase for development. For the phase that we are going through is the one where identity is established, and they also try out new ways of being. Our role is probably to keep them safe during this phase and allowing them the space to experiment with new behavior, which can grow to be part of them. And to tell us more about this is the lovely Thanisha Sewpersad.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, and you?
Welcome to Mindful Matters.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Okay. Thanisha, maybe you can just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your passions, interests, the work you do, where you're from.
Sure. I think answering a question about yourself is always difficult.
The hardest one, hey?
Yes. Okay, well, I'm the youngest of four. I love animals. And I do have many interests, but my biggest interest is in the human mind and behavior. I work actually part-time for a medical research company that specializes in HIV treatment for KZN. So we just held a conference last month, and it was about launching a new treatment protocol. And then I also run my own company in mental health called Project Me.
Okay, so we have a shared passion then. Mental health it is.
do.
And I think what's also interesting, the way the mind works.
It is very interesting.
Okay, and I went on your website and I did a little bit of research on you. So,
gosh.
Not to make you feel uncomfortable at all. No stalking happening there. And I heard that you traveled, or I read a lot of what you traveled overseas, and I saw some very interesting names. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I've always wanted to travel, actually. But I always thought traveling at a younger age is sort of wasting time.
Okay. It's one way of looking at it.
So I decided to actually find a place where I can work overseas and enjoy the countryside. So I did find two countries, in Scotland and Bali, my two dream destinations.
And two, I think, opposite ends of the world?
Yes, it was a 14-hour flight from Scotland to Bali. It was very long.
So you like all the different weathers. You went from cold to heat.
It was supposed to be summer in Scotland, but 12 degrees is not warm.
I can imagine. Being a Durban girl, yeah,
yes,
I can imagine
definitely
that.
not warm. So in Scotland, I worked at Queen Margaret University, where we did psychological research. Our research was actually to contribute to the police department of Scotland. So a little bit there. And in Bali, we did more practical counseling with local suffering various mental illnesses, kids who have been abandoned. The mindset in Bali with mental health and orphans is that you're cursed, or nobody wants you. So why should the locals
Also,
get
culturally,
involved?
there's a stigma around it.
A big stigma. So we worked with the kids, and we were actually probably the only social interaction because the locals weren't very involved. Even the companies there are from Australia. They create organizations that help out the locals. Yeah.
And, just to bring it to the topic that we're talking about, did you work a lot with adolescents in Bali?
It was very mixed. We had kids from as young as 3 that had been abandoned to adults as old as about 40.
Sure.
Yes, it was very wide range.
And I can imagine, taking abandonment, it would affect every relationship going forth. It would affect your ability to trust, the way you'd see the world.
It does, especially with the kids. Sometimes they're friends with each other, and the next minute you turn around and one is kicking the other or something. And I think it boils down to they're not actually getting affection. So us being there gives them that, and they kind of want to fight over it. In that sense, I think it was more that. So we had quite a big group of volunteers per project to ensure that each kid gets enough attention and respect and care that they deserve.
So you almost became the attachment figures to them. And
Yeah,
and I think, that's where healing happens in relationships.
it does. It's very important.
And I know I'm curious about why the title Project Me. Where did that come from?
Well, I believe in each person being a little bit egotistical.
Okay. I agree with you on that.
Yes. We have to put ourselves first sometimes. And I think with social media, we're so involved in being like everyone else that we forget who we are. So I believe that we are an ongoing project, and we should never neglect that. And the more we develop that, the more confident we become. And our catchphrase is, I am my own hero. So the more you grow into your own morals and values and your own beauty, inner and outer, you become your own hero and inspiration in that aspect. So
that's lovely. I think whoever listens, every week I say the same thing. It's, you can never pour from an empty cup. So if you are not fulfilled, and if you are not living your life, your potential to the fullest, then how would you care for anyone else?
Exactly. Yeah, it is very important. Self-care is always first. They always say charity starts at home. And, it dates back in history to always be there for yourself before you can give to others, even in relationships, parents, romantic relationships. Everything comes from you.
Don't look for someone else to complete you.
Yes.
And I think that's where society comes in, because are we actually raised to put ourselves first?
I don't really think we are. I think, across the different cultures in South Africa, different cultures offer different parenting styles. And I feel that majority of South Africa doesn't put the child first in those aspects. So we never grow up to be putting ourselves first in society. And then in university, we learn, okay, I've got to actually do self-care because exams and assignments, it becomes so stressful, balancing life if we don't live at home. We kind of, fall through the cracks there because we're not putting ourselves first.
Right. And I agree with you. Every culture has a different way of looking at it.
Yes.
And certain cultures would value, be selfless, put everybody else first, do the right thing, say yes, don't say no, be polite, and all of that, which has merits, but there has to be a limit.
And I think, you saying that with the recent violence and stuff that has been happening in South Africa, it's more with women. Don't put yourself first and be there for, your man's needs or your son's needs. And it is important to put yourself first, especially in the different cultures.
That would, definitely. And, you chose this topic today.
Yes, I did.
And I think teenagers are really, really interesting. And they've always been, and Nishal's looking at me like that. They are interesting. They're a species on their own. And they've always been known to be sort of problematic.
Yes.
Sorry to say that. But are there any challenges that are more so in the 21st century that were not there in previous times?
Okay, well, look, I find teens very interesting because they are the future of our country and of our world. And us being the older, more educate a generation of what is going on, we need to sort of equip them with the skills to tackle the future life.
Right.
In terms of the differences in challenges, I would say it's somewhat the same. It's just that because of our exponentially growing population, we see and hear of the problems more, and thanks to our digital platforms like Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, we hear about it more. So we have the same thing of drugs, bullying, sexual violence, substance abuse, those type of things. But in that, our newest factor is the digital age of cell phones and computers and those things. So I would say that is our biggest difference in terms of previous and current generations of teenagers. But otherwise, the other stuff still exists.
And you said something, and I wanted to just stop you there because you said did you say we are the smarter generation? Because I think they will not agree with you at all. They know everything.
No. So, well, yes, a teenager will definitely argue that they know more. But in terms of what's going on politically, environmentally, socially, we know more because we are sort of...
She's speaking for herself. I am not entitled to her view. Because, I mean, this is quite an entitled generation you're speaking about.
Yes.
And they come up with, but we know these things. We can Google it. We don't need your wisdom anymore.
Yes.
They don't ask the older generation usually
That's true.
because they feel they don't need to.
That's true. Having a cell phone, in one hand opens you up to knowledge. But at the end of the day, you can
I think
read
it opens you
about
up to
something.
information.
Yes, yes. You can read about something, but when you practice it, it's completely different. When you put in that pool, I mean, like, for example, studying psychology, I know that what I did in university and then when I did support groups were two completely different things.
Right.
You're working with...
So experience puts
experience.
that information and turns it into knowledge.
Yes.
Right.
And regardless of whether they think they know it all or not, it's still, I feel, our duty, if we want a better country and a better planet, to subliminally give them little messages of, recycle, or talk about your feelings, and talk about drugs. Don't hide away from it. These type of things open people up to learning more and then equipping them with skills to then take on the world when they become an adult.
And I love the term take on the world because as much as I'm teasing teens here, what I love about this generation is that they know they have choice and they have the power in their hands where if they don't like something and they're disgruntled, you will hear them. They are not voiceless anymore.
Yes. I mean, in the school, what was it, like 3 weeks ago, they were protesting because they wanted a smoking area.
That's interesting.
And I just think... I just think, like, you're in school, you shouldn't even be smoking. It literally says 18 years.
And that's the thing. I think they have this passion and this drive, and it's for us to kind of curb them, to put them into facilitate the right sort of battles that they should be taking on.
Yes.
And not doing things that would harm self.
Yes.
Because another big part about the impulsivity is that they believe to some degree that they're immortal. So they'll jump off that cliff or drive that car and take that risk. The risk taking is so much more without thinking, what are the repercussions of this?
And that's where I bring in social media. You see a lot of people hanging off the edge of cliffs and walking in buildings and doing all these things. And look, it's great.
Craving dopamine.
Dopamine.
How do you say that?
Yes. I mean, it's great. You are experiencing life and your hobbies and interests, but I think safety is a big thing, and that's where we come in as the older generation, being educated in general life skills, if I can call it that, because we have lived it and we have experienced it, and it's not just something that we can Google that will equip you with skills.
And I don't know if you'd agree, but I feel as you get older, you also get more cautious. You
Definitely.
become aware of the things that could go wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially living in South Africa, you kind of calculate everything you do, I guess.
And that's quite sad because we want them to live their life. Sometimes you think about teens, what's amazing about that age is that they want to try out all these different things.
Yes.
And to some degree, we want to give them that opportunity. But how safe is it? How do we draw that balance?
Yes. Yeah, it is difficult. And I think, look, to solve that issue, it goes back to grassroots level of the country, with having to solve the poverty issue that feeds crime. So it's a big problem.
Right. And last week we were talking about human trafficking.
Yes.
And they spoke about the role of social media, and they spoke about the fact that some teens or some people look for external validation. And this makes them more predisposed to these kind of predators that are out there. So using social media is not inherently good or bad, but so much of evil can come from it if you're out there and you are looking for this validation.
Yeah.
So I hear you when you say, the extra challenge that we have now with teens is the social media.
I think, in terms of validation, that kind of goes back to the parenting. Your kid will look for validation outside of home if they're not getting it at home, if they're not being heard. They kind of want that attention. Like if you look at systems theory, if a child or a person is acting out, it's because one of the systems that influence their behavior is malfunctioning.
Right.
And for example, one of the schools that we work in, a young lady in grade 9 was disrupting all 9 classes. And we investigated with our social worker, the root cause of it. And we realized that her parents are getting divorced. And she's stuck in the middle being the messenger between the two of them. And
so she's a symptom of the system.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the parenting and the family system is very important to your child, because what your child receives at home, they will seek outside. Whether it's fitting in and doing drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, those types of things are influenced by what your child receives at home. Even how they perform in school academically. We get a lot of parents that actually don't care to come and fetch their kid's report. If their kid was caught selling drugs or taking drugs on school property, they come in and shout at the principal. But they're forgetting that it extends from their home life,
So they expect the school to discipline, but they don't have these systems back home.
Yes. And I think there's a big gap between there, and it's very important with the younger generation because they are a bit more sensitive and more prone to these behaviors because of social media.
Right. And I completely agree with you, even to the point of if something's lacking at home, they're going to seek it outside. But another huge part of it is that children at this age start valuing their peers more.
Yes, they do.
Because it's part of that life stage. They start moving away from the value of the parents and they start valuing the opinion of their friends, which is a natural sort of transition. So sometimes I see some parents that try their best and yet the teen will go and experiment. And sometimes giving too much is also something that parents have to look at, that sometimes giving them more than what they require can also be a bad thing.
It definitely is, and that's where that balance needs to be found. Like, for example, one technique that I found was this American psychologist. She said, if you take away your child's cell phone, you shouldn't then go on Facebook and scroll for 2 hours and then return your child's cell phone.
So you model the behavior you want.
Exactly. Yeah. And within those 2 hours, you need to sit with your child and talk to them. And this is where the balance comes in. And I think it's, again, it's culturally that we sort of shout or reprimand or scare our kids into don't do this and don't do that. And, you will end up here. And do you want to be like this? And do you want to end up, It's about talking. It's not about scaring anyone. It's not about reprimanding anyone.
And I feel that when you're screaming or shouting, no one's actually listening.
No, and you're pushing your child even further away from you and into a world of more darkness. And it's literally about, okay, you know what? You did drugs in school. Can we talk about why you did this? What do you feel that you need to do this? Is it your friends that's influencing? Is it something at home that's making you upset? And very so often I hear parents using terms very wrongly. They call their child stuck up or depressed, and they do so in a very condescending tone. And that's a big issue because your child is not stuck up. They're literally feeling sad about something and they just don't want to talk to you because they don't feel you're going to understand.
And if you're not going to give them the benefit of the doubt, then who will?
Exactly. And as parents, we all want our kids to do well. But they do make mistakes, and a mistake is a learning curve, not a chance to reprimand them.
And I hear you. So if there's a mistake, then you catch them and you speak about this is what you did incorrectly, not that you are a mistake or you are wrong.
Yes.
It's that action that we look at.
Yes.
And then there's chance for rehabilitation then.
Absolutely, because you got to build your child's confidence. You want them to be something great, So you have to build what makes a person great, and that's their confidence.
Right. And I have this line I tell all my parents. I'm sure they find it very annoying. But I always say when there's some sort of problem, it's time for connection, not correction. Because you can get yourself blue in the face and say, don't do this and don't do that, and there will be no difference.
Absolutely.
Take them out for coffee. Do not talk about the issue at all. Connect with them. And then they will come to you with something. You have to believe that they still want to be connected to you.
Absolutely. You should be your child's first friend. And, we talk about it from a teenage point of view, but it does start from a younger age. Obviously, you can't reprimand your child when they're younger and then just expect them to sort of become your friend as a teenager.
Right.
It does start from younger. Kids do naughty things. They will steal or draw on furniture, but not on purpose.
Right.
They're just doing it because it's kids' behavior, experimentation. So again, parenting does start from the time your child is born, but it's just that it intensifies when they become a teenager.
And I agree with you. And I think the other part of it is that being a parent, I've always wanted to be their friend. And then I realized that, as a child, when they're in that younger phase, they don't need a friend. They need a parent.
Yes.
And then maybe as they grow older,
Yes.
then the relationship, the dynamics shift, and then you can become that friend. But sometimes parents want to do everything to be liked, and tough loves. It's important because sometimes, they say if you're doing parenting correctly, there will be
Yes.
times when your child will hate you. And then okay, I think I'm on the right path. And I know I'm saying it quite lightly, but there comes some times where you have to take certain decisions where your intention is the best.
Yes.
And sometimes a child might not like it. Like you try to curb the use of technology in the house and you bring it down. They will kick up a fuss, but it's for their own good. So
It is
we
for
can't
their
shy
own
away
good.
from that.
Yes,
Yeah.
but like I said, if you're going to curb the use of technology, you as a parent have to do the same thing. Like I said earlier on, is we are the older generation that is more educated, and we do have to lead by example and by equipping them with skills. So if we are taking their cell phone away, but then we're not doing the same thing,
Right.
it's
And
kinda
I think speaking to
counterproductive.
them about it, that, this is my intent. This is the rationale. At the end of the day, it's out of love. It's not out of punishment. Because if we go to be punitive, that child's not going to want to connect to us.
Yes, and for example, I know that Sundays is always a family day. And so often you see at a shopping mall a family having lunch and
Everybody's on their phones. Yes,
Yes.
completely. Yeah.
And look, I like family day. It's a very fun way to reconnect with your kids, with your parents, with each other. But don't take your cell phones or don't use your cell phones there. It's literally counterproductive. And, I always see on Mother's Day or Father's Day, people post about their parents. Oh, I love my mom. But the rest of the year, the other 364 days of the year, they're not really showing that love or doing anything for them. And it also comes, I think,
It makes a good pick on social media, though.
yes, it's all about the social media,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
But again, it's that sort of respect, I think, that needs to be reinstilled in the younger generation as well, which might also cause the disconnect or deviant behavior.
And I think meal times, should be every day a time for connection.
Absolutely.
Also, make that eye contact. And I think it's a good rule to say, put all the phones away.
Yes.
And I think it was mentioned on one of the other shows that if you're going out and the first person to a restaurant and the first person to touch the phone pays the bill.
That's
So
actually
that
a
should
good
be,
thing, yeah.
what is that? What's the word for that? Negative reinforcement.
Yes, negative reinforcement. I like that you said eye contact, though, because eye contact builds trust and relationships. And it's very important to have that eye contact, especially between a parent and a child and between siblings.
Okay.
It really goes a long way in building trust.
Right, and connection.
And
that
connection.
Because I think when that connection goes, that's when the teen is ready to connect to all the other wrong sorts of
Absolutely.
influences. So social media came up a lot. But what are the other common challenges in this age group, and how do you help with these?
It is very overwhelming, to be honest. I sit with the principal and I hear about all the issues that's going on in the school, and it's like a blanket of hot water thrown, But so what we found is that amongst the issues of drugs, violence, bullying, sexual behavior, we have a huge lack of respect. And that's respect for yourself, your peers, your mind, your body, your education. And even the principals and teachers listening, I think you will agree that the teenagers today don't respect getting an education as much as previous generations or your generation did. And so what we do is, before we actually tackle the problems of drugs, violence, sexual behavior and bullying, we actually teach them the importance of respect. So why should you respect yourself, and what effect can it have on your surroundings if you start to respect yourself and your education? And we just bring it back down to basics in terms of, you're taking drugs. It has very bad effects on your brain. Do you respect your body? Do you respect your life? Would you like to have a future? It's sort of counseling, but not in the, what can I call it, in the...
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You know, not in the...
sense, yeah.
It's sort of just having a conversation with the kids.
Right, and stimulating their thinking.
Yes. Because at the end of the day, you can reprimand, and be... mental health professional, or any professional,
to them, yeah.
Yes, but they are not going to relate to you that way. If they see that you actually understand where they are coming from, you have a higher chance of getting through to them. So that's what we try to do. Our volunteers are young. They are postgrad in psychology or in any social science, and we get them to go down to grassroots level again, do skits with them, role play with them, you know, ask them to pick out what was wrong in that situation and why was it wrong.
So experiential learning. They learn through that experience.
Absolutely. And you would think, okay, you know, for teenagers, you should up the level a bit, but it's literally just going back to basics. And again, it's that disconnect from parenting at home to then socializing with peers that kind of breaks the behavior that they learned at home, which is why I think parents as a whole should join together in a community and talk about their kids and not be embarrassed about their behavior, because if you join together and talk about it, you have a higher chance of combating the problem. And if you kind of have a similar approach between your kids' friends' parents, you can combat the problem more because they're learning the similar...
Yeah, they're probably coming from similar circumstances and going through the... But, you know, their social media comes in again. People put in their best pictures.
Absolutely.
I'll put a picture of my kid doing well or all the happy times. Who is actually going to show the vulnerabilities? You know, this is my challenge. This is my struggle. I want a real connection. Someone to understand what I'm going through.
The thing is, though, like, I think what people are afraid of is if they post that, it's misconstrued as seeking attention.
Yeah.
And that's where...
But that's the thing. It doesn't have to be on social media.
No.
Connect with someone in your space
parents.
Genuinely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Connect with your parents. Connect with your teachers. I know the teachers that I have spoken to are willing and ready to talk to the kids. And they want to connect with them. It just happens that there's so much of negativity and deviant behavior going on that it becomes very difficult. But if one of the kids just approaches them and says, look, I don't want people to know that I'm approaching you about this, but this is what's going on and I need help.
Right. You know, the other thing that while you were talking came up is bullying.
Yes.
Before, bullying was at school or in a space that's contained. Now bullying, because of social media, cyberbullying is such a huge thing, and once it's out there, it moves so quickly.
It does.
And your child is not even safe in your own space anymore. You don't know who they're talking to. You don't know who has this information. You know, things can be screenshotted and saved, and it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
How can we help them in terms of cyberbullying?
I was listening to a human trafficking show last week, and it was one of the ladies said that they actually see their kids' social media platforms. They go through what they're saying in the pictures and everything, and to do that, you have to have a very strong relationship with your kid. So again, it goes back to building that relationship. But I also want to bring it back to how we are the older generation setting the example, and a lot of adults also partake in cyberbullying. And I think because it's over the computer or some sort of digital platform, it kind of gives us that...
almost power.
Yes, that power.
Without repercussions.
Without any repercussions. And people want to see... I watched a video about this gentleman reprimanding some kids who were fighting. And he says to these two kids who are fighting, all these people watching you want to see you fight. They want to see you hate each other. Right. And I think that's applicable for cyberbullying as well, is that we as spectators we read the comments. We read the comments of the comments.
We watch this, yeah.
We watch
it play out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be doing that. We should just say, okay, you know what, I don't agree with you, but I'm not going to bother commenting, or I'm not going to break down your image or your confidence, because you are another human being and you are respected in your field and you are respected to have an opinion. And that's where I think,
So by interacting and engaging, we're actually adding power to it.
yes, we are giving power to it. And I think sometimes walking away from it is better than watching, because you're not encouraging it.
Right. And I think even in terms of sharing, you have to be very responsible. If something comes to you, don't just broadcast it.
No.
Look at it responsibly. Is this true? And even if it is, do I have the right? Who am I? Am I perfect? Is there no judge? Who am I to pass this on?
Exactly. Like, for example, every time something bad happens in the country, you get these rumor messages going around that these people are going to march and they're going to kill and they're going to do these things.
And we spread panic.
And we spread this panic, but again, someone who wanted to do this created this message and then spread it, around like that. And it's a rumor again. And it's creating panic, and it's creating sort of a disconnect against a culture or a race in South Africa, which is wrong because we are a rainbow nation. So the same thing is applicable on social media. If you see something, check it out if it's true. Even if it is true, it's not yours to share, and we shouldn't be sharing it.
Right. So be responsible in what you broadcast, what you share.
Yes, and kids always turn around and say, but you do it.
Yeah.
So you do have to be a very responsible adult.
To set the example, lead by example.
Yes.
Right. And so how do we get parents involved? Because we spoke a lot about the disconnect between parents and how that causes, or puts the child in that predisposed position to be vulnerable. How can we encourage the connect to happen? How do we get parents to come in and be motivated to connect again?
It is really difficult, especially because, if you have a kid that's like 17 years old, as a parent, you say, I've been doing this for 17 years.
You don't tell me how to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's literally just thinking about the betterment of your child and putting your child first. It just, as a parental community, you have to one day stop and say, okay, what is going on with our kids? There's no use just sitting back and complaining about them. But you have to become proactive.
So you're almost saying reflect and take some I don't think we can put all the responsibility, but some responsibility.
Some responsibility. Because again, kids are influenced by other kids. And those kids come from different homes. You don't know what's going on. And for example, if you are going through some sort of divorce or separation, please don't put your kids in between. Because it does, just because they're 17 or 18 years old, it doesn't mean that they know how to cope with it.
Yeah.
Divorce is hard, separation is hard on any person, even a 20.
But remember, a child had no choice in that. So
Exactly.
it's so much harder for them.
Exactly. So as difficult and as quickly as you want to get out of the marriage or the relationship, you still need to be there for your child, because your child is half of you, and you did bring this human being into the world.
And we spoke about hormonally as well, and with the way the brain develops, the emotions in a teen are so huge. When they're excited, oh my word, you don't even know how I'm feeling. Only I'm experiencing this.
Yes.
But when they're down and angry, then too, it just becomes so much for them. So we have to take cognizance that, be aware of what you're putting in front of them, because they may think they know, but
Absolutely.
can they actually deal with it?
Coping mechanisms are really important, especially with parents. Other than reflecting, literally just connect with your child. Just do activities. Don't overwhelm your child, because you will overwhelm both of you from not spending any time to
Smothering them.
Yes.
And they smothered easily.
Yes.
They are.
So just spend 10 minutes a day and build from that. Make Sunday family day again, or something,
Where you connect, yeah. And not the mall. Maybe somewhere with a bit of nature.
Yes,
Something
beach,
like that.
parks.
You could try.
Yeah.
And, look, time has gone so quickly. I'm wondering if there's any last tips or advice that you could give to our teenagers and the parents to help them get through this phase in the most positive way.
For teenagers, I would say you might not choose how your story started, but you have the ability to write the end of it. So before you want to get involved or with the wrong people or wrong substances, just think about the repercussions it's going to have on your life. Think about the future that you want for yourself and do things that will enable you to have that future, because you are the author of your own story. Also talk to your parents. They might not understand, but talk to them, because one day if you keep talking to them, they might just start listening. And to the parents out there, please don't reprimand or scare your kids. If they come to you because they're feeling scared or sad or lonely, listen to what they have to say, because it will go a long way in making a difference in their life.
Right. And I like the word that you used earlier. You said respect. And I think if there's respect all around, respect for self, respect for the child, respect for the parent.
Mind and body.
Mind and body. And a little bit of kindness wouldn't help.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't hurt either. And thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing such amazing and valuable information with us.
Thank you. I hope it will go a long way with all of our listeners.
Yeah, I think whoever's meant to hear it and resonate with it will. But to round up today's show, I will leave you with the thought of the day. Bringing up children in the 21st century is not easy. It's not any easier or harder than bringing up children in any century, I think. Of course, each time period has its unique problems. But genetic advice will always offer the best solution, because the nature of the human being remains unchanged. When Allah sent down the Quran, He filled it with advice and reminders that would be equally useful for all time periods. And this brings me to the words of the surah of the Quran, that is Surah Luqman, in which a wise father advises his son the following: to be as successful as himself. And he says he achieved his success by doing the following: lowering my gaze, watching my tongue, eating what is lawful, keeping my chastity, undertaking my promises, fulfilling my commitments, being hospitable to guests, respecting my neighbors, and discarding what does not concern me. All this made me the one you are looking at today. This is timeless advice, and we hope some teens today will be listening and heeding. So, see you guys next week, inshallah, when we will have another interesting topic, and that is perinatal distress, how to avoid and ensure a stress-free pregnancy and birth. Sumaya Muhammad of Mother's Intuition will be joining us. Assalamu alaikum, and I hope this show lived up to its promise to inspire, educate, and motivate. And remember, be mindful, be kind, and enjoy the rest of your week.